Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast College Gymnastics edition. Today, we are here. The bracket has been revealed. The real bracket for the 2025 National Collegiate Women's Championship. By the time you're listening to this, you might have listened to our bracket of the who's been the best champion in the past decades. So that may be out. Make sure you listen to that. But now we're going to do the real bracket that came out on Monday.
Mhm.
324. So back with us again. I told you the last episode it'd be super quick that she be back. The college gymnastics expert, Sarah Bogan. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Doing pretty well. Pretty well. It's been a fun weekend of gymnastics watching, and it's kind of a good thing that we have a week off before postseason actually starts in earnest,
Mhm.
because it's a lot to recover from always, conference championships, and it's going to be a lot to take in once postseason starts. So re the regional round especially is kind of nonstop. So very excited for that.
Before we go right into the bracket, because we're just gonna get right into it. Sarah, who were the conference champions? Because that concluded.
Yes, so I've got to start. I've got to do it. I've got to start by shouting out my Utah State Aggies. They are the Mountain West champions. I'm so proud of them. They actually lost two of their gymnasts, one of which was probably one of their best gymnasts on vault and floor. Nyla Morabito went down with a torn Achilles last week. And they bounced back. They replaced her in the lineups, had an amazing floor rotation starting out, an amazing vault rotation, and then they just did their normal on bars and beam. Held off a surging San Jose State, um, and pulled it out, got the conference championship win just 3 years after they basically had to rebuild after the mass exodus to Clemson. So I'm really proud of them. I'm really excited to see where this program continues to go in the years moving forward and also in the postseason because we are going to talk about them in the bracket. So that's Mountain West. Big Ten, UCLA pulled it out. That was kind of, expected based on the recent meet results. Unfortunately, I was really thinking Michigan State was going to outpace UCLA this year, but UCLA has been surging at just the right time. So UCLA are Big Ten champions for the first time that they've ever been in Big Ten. Um, University of Utah is now Big 12 champion for the first time since being in Big 12. And kind of a little bit of an upset, in my opinion, is that ACCs were taken by Stanford. So, if we remember, Stanford last year was an unranked team going into regionals, and it ended up making it all the way, being a spoiler, going all the way to nationals. So, I like to say that those Stanford kids know how to cram for an exam. They know how to pull it out at just the right time. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit. Like they beat Cal. They beat California to win the ACC championship. So we've got to keep our eyes on Stanford moving forward for sure. SECs were won by LSU, reigning national champions. Oklahoma got second, I believe, at SECs, if I remember correctly. But it was a tough meet for Oklahoma. We'll talk a little bit more about this, I think, in the bracket as we break it down, but it wasn't a great SEC debut for Oklahoma. They were looking like they haven't quite peaked yet. Um, and they showed some nerves that kind of concerned me and should be concerning Oklahoma fans. And then beyond that, what other conferences did we miss? So Eagle was, I think, George Washington. Southern Utah won the MPSF. They're having an amazing season. And I think that mostly covers it. There might be a couple of conferences I'm missing there, but um, yeah, it was a really exciting weekend of conference championship meets.
So just a couple of things I wanted to add more for the Big Ten and the SEC, because obviously with conference realignment, all this stuff. So
Mhm.
obviously it's UCLA's first Big Ten title because it's the first year they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
They won the regular season title. Yeah, your inaugural year. They also the 198-4 150 is the highest team score ever recorded at the Big Ten Championships.
And I believe it's the highest score of all the teams this past conference championship weekend. Now, there is a little bit, I didn't get an opportunity to watch the Big Ten championships because I forgot to hit record on my DVR. But the consensus in looking at the scores, it did seem like the scoring was kind of crazy at Big Tens relative to maybe like the Big 12s, especially and SEC session one. But still, regardless, it was a really strong statement for UCLA to be making in the conference championships.
Yep. So they had that. Then Michigan State, they came in second with a 198, 150. That was the third best team score in championship history. So
Mhm.
that too. And then just going back to LSU, because we talked about it at the beginning of the year, and well, end of the last pod of the last year and the first pod of this year that all right, LSU, what are you gonna do when Oklahoma comes to your conference? Texas, like all these SEC schools. Not only did they just say, all right, we'll see what we can do, they repeated as conference champions with those same schools that we talked about, like, oh, maybe they're going to win the SEC. And they took care of business. So they're repeat champs. And that is no easy feat, especially with a conference as deep as the SEC in women's gymnastics.
Yeah, LSU, I think being a champion suits LSU much more than being kind of the underdog suited LSU. Like they are a team that loves to celebrate themselves and um like the crowning the like royalty purple
Mm-hmm.
imagery they like to use. Like they are carrying themselves like champions and they seem to be very comfortable carrying themselves like champions. And I think it's bringing out the best in their team, whereas I think other teams have crumbled under the pressure of that. So I'm really happy to see LSU carrying themselves in this way going into the defense of their first title.
Yeah, and that's where we'll just lead right into it because, again, last year they were the hunters. They let it be known that they want to win the national championship, and they did. And then obviously last year we also talked about you know, all year it was like, oh, Oklahoma, then human error happened and then they lost, and then LSU
Mhm.
did what they said. This year they are the hunted. They were consistently at the top. They repeated as SEC champs, and now they're set on one other thing, being the national champs. And with their dominating performance in the SEC championship, Sarah, for the first time in LSU's history, they were granted the number one seed in the
Yes.
women's college gymnastics tournament, which is obviously a major deal the first time you do anything. So that's now they're the hunted. So
Yes.
it's just a major deal. Like again, the run you're having right now, and now it's your first overall seed. It's like okay, now if if they repeat, then you honestly have to start thinking about, all right, where does this team rank all time? Because now they've done two in a row and done this stuff and do that. That's the type of history they're chasing. Because now you
Mhm.
can't say that we're not one of the, you can't say we were a fluke. Because a lot of people do say that they were a fluke just because if Oklahoma didn't mess up, Oklahoma would have smoked them in the title. That's stuff they had to hear
Mhm.
all year. They
They
get
heard
to
it
go.
from the coaches in the preseason poll. They've heard
Yep.
it indirectly in the rankings all season.
And what did they already do? They beat Oklahoma right in the SEC championship. So all that talk, the chirping, they're gonna be like, all right, but then someone might say, okay, but that's the SEC champion. That's not the big bracket. Who knows where he was where? But they're answering the call of champions. We'll see how far they get. But again, shout out to them.
Yeah.
First ever number one seed.
LSU deserves to be celebrated, regardless of what the end result is of this tournament. The fight they've put up and the way they've approached defending their title so far this season has been
Hmm.
so impressive, and I hope they're really proud of themselves no matter what.
So Sarah, when we're looking at the bracket, obviously LSU, the number one overall seed. And then you have Oklahoma, the 2 seed,
Mhm.
Florida, the 3 seed, and Utah, the 4 seed. So basically, because of conference realignment, you have three SEC schools out of the top four for the top four spots. Do you agree with the top four? Would you change anything?
Hmm. I think so. I mean, the rankings are based on these national qualifying scores that I think are a pretty balanced
Hmm.
representation of how the teams perform throughout the season.
Hmm.
I don't think they'll necessarily correspond to the Final Four, which we will talk about moving forward. So, wait, so what did you say the top four was? So you said it's Michigan, so LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, and
Utah.
oh, Utah. Never mind. Yeah, I do agree with that. Totally. Actually, no. Actually, let's get into it. Let's talk through the bracket
Hmm.
and I'll let you know where I'm uncertain on
I
that.
know with Utah, just already there are people who thought UCLA should be a 4 instead of a 5.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with UCLA and Utah when they face each other in the regional final coming
spoiler
up.
alert. All
So,
right, let's get right into it. The first round, you basically like if for people who follow NCAA basketball, you have the first four in games in NCAA basketball. This is basically the same for gymnastics. Is basically teams who are in but not on the cuffs of being in the big thing. They got to win a meet to get into the big dance.
yes,
That is Friday. No, that's not Friday, April 2nd. That is April 2nd.
April
That is
2nd and April 3rd.
yes. That is concluding. So we're gonna knock these ones out and then move pick who we decide. So first we'll go Maryland versus West Virginia.
Yeah, I'm
Sarah.
going to say West Virginia definitely for me. They've got the higher NQS, but I've also been really impressed with West Virginia and their energy this season and their plunger hat. And they've been a really fun team, and I think they're going to do really well in this play-in meet.
As one of the four teams I've seen live, I'm gonna pick West Virginia as well. I'm not gonna argue here. BYU versus Utah State. Kind
Well,
of,
you know what I'm going to say, Martin.
hmm.
I've got to go with my Aggies, Utah State. This is actually really interesting because they're tied in their NQS. Um, they're also a team there. This regional is going to be based in Salt Lake City,
Hmm.
and they're both teams have really passionate fan bases that also all live in Utah. So I think these play-in meets usually don't have a lot of attendance.
Hmm.
But I think for these two teams in particular, we're going to see them bring fans out. So I'm thinking it's going to be really exciting, really good matchup. Um, and these teams also go back a long time in terms of a rivalry going back to the MRGC. So I'm pulling for Utah State. I think they can pull it out, especially after the performance they had last week at conference championships. But this is the play-in. I'm sure you
Yeah, I
are
don't.
not at all surprised. This is the play-in I'm most excited
No,
for.
no, 100%. Illinois versus UC Davis.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. UC Davis had an incredible meet at conference championships. So I think they weren't even in the conversation, but they pulled out like a 196.4 or something, some crazy high score for them to qualify into the tournament. So I think they have what it takes. They've got momentum. They can win, but I'm a little bit worried about them being able to repeat.
Okay.
Kind of you have the dream meet. Can you repeat again? And so because of that, I think Illinois is probably going to pull this one out, but it's another going to be an interesting
Ooh,
meet to
I
watch
messed
given
that one up.
Davis.
And then Clemson and Rutgers.
Yes, this is another controversial situation because Clemson was actually ranked. Typically, it's the bottom 8 teams of
Hmm.
the top 36 that end up in these play-in meets. Clemson was ranked 27th, but ended up in
Hmm.
this regional for geography reasons.
Hmm.
So you can see they're kind of in their NQS. It's head and shoulders above Rutgers. I do think Clemson's going to pull this one out. I think they've been a little bit of a hot and cold team. They're not a very consistent team. So I think if they have an off day and Rutgers has a great day, I think it could happen that Rutgers goes through, but I do believe Clemson has the edge here. So I'm going with Clemson.
All right, all right, let's keep going. All right, Sarah. So again, for people who have been listening, they know how this bracket works. For just quickly, since we're going to do basically the play-ins are all in the real first round of the bracket. It is basically a quad meet, correct? And then the top two teams advance, correct?
Yes,
All right. So this one here between Michigan State, Kentucky, Ohio State, Penn State, I think we both are going to think Michigan State's going to be one of them.
absolutely 100%.
So
Michigan State.
who do you think's going to be number two?
Hmm. I'm thinking I'm thinking it's going to be Kentucky. I think Ohio State has potential. But Kentucky, I think, is head and shoulders above those other two teams. I don't think they're going to have too much of a problem advancing.
I don't disagree. Ohio State would need the Kentucky to have human error and for them to have their best day. Because I mean, I've seen them be able to pull out 9-9s. So
Yeah.
it's just they just haven't been consistent. Like as a team, record wise, they just haven't been consistent in these bigger meets.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I feel like Ohio State can beat a certain caliber of gymnasts. Like once you start getting to these super elites like the Michigan States or like a UCLA and conference like that, they just don't have enough right now. So I agree.
Hmm.
Don't need something crazy. All right, well, we know LSU is gonna go. So who's gonna join LSU?
This one I wasn't sure. I think this is one area where I think we could have an upset with Michigan. But I think Arkansas, something interesting about Arkansas is they were actually excluded from the SEC championship.
Ooh, okay.
Somewhat. So the SEC champ, now that they have 9 teams, the SEC coaches decided that there would only be 2 sessions of SECs, and each one would only have 4 teams, and so that leaves the bottom one out. Arkansas petitioned, they were number 9. They petitioned to be able to go and compete against Oregon State last weekend. That was denied by the coaches board with the NCAA.
Jeez. Okay.
And yes, so that was very interesting. So they actually didn't compete at SECs, and I'm wondering whether that's actually going to give them an edge. They have this mental rest, they have this rest for their bodies, and they also have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder to kind of bounce back from that disappointment of not making it to SECs. And so for that reason, I'm pushing through Arkansas.
Can you imagine? Talk about human motivation. What better motivation than you don't get to be in the conference tournament, but you get to be in the NCAA ones, and in your bracket, in your side, is not only the person who won the SEC championship, but also the reigning defending national champions. If that doesn't motivate you to really show out and prove that you can hang with them or you should have been in that tournament, I don't know what will. That motivating factor alone, I think, I think they're going to, they're going to gymnastics angry.
I hope so.
Well, okay. Well, UCLA is going to go. So who's going to join UCLA?
I think Minnesota. I think Southern Utah, like a Southern Utah or Boise State would really, really need some help from Minnesota or UCLA, I guess, in order to pull something out. I think Southern Utah certainly has the potential to put pressure on Minnesota. But I think Minnesota's by far the better team. So I think that'll be a pretty clean semifinal as well, with UCLA and Minnesota coming out.
So down here, are
Hmm.
you going to go double Utah? Are
Ha,
you going to do it?
I'm not going to do it
All
because
right.
I love, love, love my Aggies, and I would love to see them go all the way to the regional final. But I said this before, I am really, really believing in Stanford right now. I think they were really, really impressive last weekend. They showed last year that they can pull it out in postseason and perform under pressure. And so, as much as it kills me, my heart bracket definitely has double Utah, but my brain bracket, which is what we're doing here, is Utah Stanford. So, some former Pac-12 conference mates going together.
What about up here, this Missouri, Georgia, Arizona, Arizona State? What do you make of this side?
Hmm. This one I think will be pretty easy. I do think it'll be Missouri and Georgia. I think Georgia's had an incredible season. I kind of expected Georgia with the change in coaching staff and change in leadership and culture. I expected them to rise slowly over time, but they have really shot up. Like finishing in the top 10 in the regular season is an incredible feat. I think they have a good culture going on. I think they've got a good thing that they're building and pushing forward. And so Missouri and Georgia, definitely. Missouri was really fun to watch at SECs. They made it into that evening session, that coveted top four evening session of the SEC championship. You can tell they're a special team and they're a hungry team. They, gave a few interviews saying, we're tired of being underestimated. We belong in these conversations to go to nationals. They've got Helen Hu throwing out the first perfect 10 of the season on beam. They're having an incredible year. So I don't see anyone making it from that semi besides Missouri and Georgia.
All right, then you got Oklahoma. Who's just going to join Oklahoma?
Yes, so Oklahoma's making it through. I think this is another one. I think Nebraska could challenge Auburn, but
Hmm,
I think like if there's going to be an upset in this round, I think Nebraska pushing out Auburn might be the one that happens. But I'm going to play it safe with my bracket and go with Auburn.
okay. Ooh, that was a terrible circle. California, Alabama, North Carolina, Iowa.
Yeah. Kind of same story. Cal and Alabama. Something interesting to keep in mind is this regional site down here. You see that star next to Alabama.
Hmm.
Alabama's hosting this one.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to have their home court advantage. They're going to have their home fans. They're going to be able to sleep in their own beds the night before. And so
Why is that? Why do they get to host, or is it just the luck of the year?
it's predetermined. So the hosts are determined like 4 or 5 years out.
Okay.
It so happens this year, Bama was one of the hosts.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think in the first round, Cal and Bama will make it out pretty cleanly.
All right. And then you have Florida here. You gonna have Clemson, a dart. You're gonna join them, or
No, I don't think so. I think if Clemson has a good day, unfortunately, Clemson is struggles with consistency a little bit. So if they have a really awesome day and make it through the, if they make it and win their play-in meet, I don't think they're going to be able to pull out a Cinderella story performance the next day. I don't think Clemson's that kind of team. Um, so I think this one will also be pretty clean with Florida and Oregon State.
okay.
So yeah, the first couple rounds here were not too bad. And I was filling out my bracket honestly thinking, oh man, this isn't going to be a problem at all. And then then I kind of got to the national level and it was difficult. So regional finals is next. I think I had an okay time with the regional finals, but it definitely gets rough moving
So
forward.
who are you having advance between the Michigan State, Kentucky, LSU, Arkansas?
This one wasn't too hard. I think Michigan State, I do really believe in Michigan State, and I think LSU is going to pull it out.
It's terrible. Oh, doing this with a little thing is awful.
Oh no.
I wonder if I could do a different one. Oh, that's really it. Okay, whatever. So this is where I kind of have a problem.
Okay.
So Michigan State came in second place in the Big Ten championship.
Hmm.
They had the third highest whatever score in Big Ten championship history. And what is their reward? They get placed in the defending national champions bracket.
Yeah.
Like, and they're gonna lose. But outside of human error, my thing is like if you and also LSU, I mean, they're gonna get okay. LSU's reward is they're gonna get pushed by the Big Ten runner up. But
Hmm.
my thing is just like if you're the overall number one seed, shouldn't you get the right to get a quote unquote easier path? And if you're someone like Michigan State, you're sitting there like, nah, we might not be able to beat LSU, but Michigan State thinking like, all right, we hung with UCLA, we could maybe beat Florida, maybe we could beat Oklahoma if they're bad, but they're on this side where they're gonna go home. So that's why I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
get how
it's
the seating is,
the
but I feel like they got
this left
screwed
side of the
there.
bracket is really, really tough. And that seems to happen every year. Every year,
Yeah.
there's one side that's really, really tough to make it out, and one that is kind of like, you know what you can make your safe bets and you kind of know what's going to happen before. But this semifinal, which we'll get to, this semifinal was the hardest one for me to decide because it's just you've got Michigan State, LSU in with, and I'll just say it, I'm expecting UCLA and Utah to make it out of that other regional. So with Michigan
Mhm.
State, LSU, UCLA, and Utah, like I had a really, really hard time deciding on who to advance. And I was flip-flopping leading up to minutes before we started recording.
Okay, so we'll come back. So UCLA, Utah. So then here, I think, who do we have here? Who are we going with? We're going with the Sooners.
And I think I'll give it to Mizzou. Like, I think they have something special this year in particular.
We're just going to do line.
And they deserve it. They really, really deserve to say that they are national qualifiers, and they will carry themselves very well into that national stage.
So then here I have this California, Alabama, Florida, Oregon State.
Ooh, okay. Here is where I have an upset.
All right. Take
Okay.
those.
So I'm advancing Florida, and I'm also going out on a limb, and I'm going to say Alabama is going to make it out. So I think Cal hasn't wowed me this year. They lost ACCs. ACCs was basically theirs to lose this year, and Stanford beat them out. Cal in the past has had a hard time really delivering in postseason when they really, really need to. And then on top of that, Alabama is in their home arena. So sometimes that can put a lot of pressure on people, but other times, especially for these SEC schools that are really, really used to being in their home arena with really, really high stakes and really loud crowds and all eyes on them, I think Bama is better prepared to handle that than Cal. I think Bama has also been a little bit of an inconsistent team, but their ceiling is high and they've been getting better over the course of the season, whereas Cal has kind of also been hot and cold, but aren't quite as hot as Bama is right now. So potentially controversial pick, Alabama, Florida.
All right. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, the Elite Eight to the Final Four.
Yes.
Michigan, LSU, UCLA, Utah.
Yeah. So can we do the right side first? Because
Sure.
the right side will be easier.
Okay.
So Mizzou, Oklahoma, Bama, Florida. I'm taking Oklahoma. I wasn't quite sure on this, but I am going to advance Florida. They're of the three remaining teams when you take out Oklahoma. They're, I think, the best. If Florida ended up on the other side of the bracket, I don't know if that would be true, but Florida definitely has the talent. They showed amazing moments of greatness at SECs, throwing down a really high bar score. They got two tens in one rotation. They're a top class, top tier team, and I think they're going to make it. So Oklahoma, Florida from that semi.
Okay. All right. And then on this side?
All right, so this is tough. This is really tough. Um, I do think some. I do think LSU is going to advance.
All right. So this is where this actually gets tough for you because now you have one spot, UCLA, Utah, Michigan State. And this is why I
Yeah.
kind of get mad about Michigan State because I feel like if they were on the other side, they would have a significantly better chance to get to the Final Four.
Oh, I agree. So I don't know if Michigan State, they certainly have the ability. Like they definitely have the talent. I don't know about going up against UCLA and Utah and LSU in the same place. I think Michigan State's not going to make it through. I think LSU is definitely going. The two that I think are most in contention for that second spot from this semi are UCLA and Utah. And I keep going back and forth on which. So I ended up, so UCLA, they've got Jordan Childs. They've been having an amazing, and like I underestimated UCLA. I wasn't expecting them to do as well as they have this year. They have surprised me, and I will own that. They surprised the heck out of me. They're a team with heart, and they've been showing heart week after week after week, and they've been getting better and better and better. That said, Utah is very competitive. They know how to show up and compete. They've faced adversity this season and bounced back from it. Their head coach, Carly Dockendorf, has been pacing them very, very well and is clearly a very good coach in terms of mental game and peaking at the right time. And I think that more calculated approach is going to be what pushes Utah into the national championship and maybe give them an edge over UCLA. But that is almost a coin toss. I think either one could make it through. But I am going with LSU and Utah.
Okay. Um, I, just because just because these brackets, sometimes all the four teams make it, sometimes they don't. This would, in that situation, they would. Again, you could obviously make the case of Utah is technically the four seed at UCLA the five, but you could say 4A, 4B.
Hmm.
If I, if because you're not even allowed, because college women's gymnastics aren't even on betting sites. But if I
Uh-huh.
were able to bet on the UCLA Utah debate, I really think I would take UCLA because of the
Mm.
fact of two things. Obviously, just for the power, not even saying this has any effect on anything, obviously, but the powers of B. There's one girl who Utah doesn't have that UCLA has, and her name is Jordan Childs.
Is that real?
And obviously, you are telling me a Final Four with Livy Dunn and Jordan Childs, like coming out of those sides over there, like, and you have her on there just after the Olympics, just after the third place thing, just after that. They obviously would draw a lot of interest. And I just feel like she's going to get this team right up because who hasn't been in the bigger spotlight than her these past couple years? Obviously, there's other Olympians who are like in college gymnastics, but Jordan Childs was the second biggest story out of the Olympics, if not
Mhm.
maybe the biggest besides Simone like coming back. But obviously the third place medal debacle was the thing we were all talking about. So I do think she's gonna get these girls ready to go. And I think Utah and UCLA is gonna be a walk-off.
The heart that we're seeing and the bounce back that UCLA has honestly, I think there's a big chance that a lot of that is due to Jordan Childs'
Hmm.
attitude and leadership and energy. Because I think that might have been one of the things that hurt UCLA so much last year too, is Jordan was this massive leader and this massive presence on the team.
Yep.
All of a sudden she left for a year to go to the Olympics and
Yep.
UCLA really floundered.
Yep.
But now she's back with her team and her team is doing amazing again.
So I just again, you're right. It's like picking a thing. I honestly could see this coming down to the last person on the last event.
Absolutely.
Like we're having a walk off, but then it's like, who do I trust more in big game situations? It's probably Jordan. So
Really?
I mean, it's a toss up. Like you can go UCL, you can go Utah, I can go UCLA. I don't think you're wrong either way.
Hmm.
But I just in the sake of content, I will go UCLA.
All right. I'm very excited to see what comes out of that semifinal.
So, woo, voodoo.
All right.
So
So,
technically, if they both, because we're both picking different ones. So then the final four: LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, Utah, or LSU, Florida, Oklahoma, UCLA.
hmm. So I've actually thought through both of these.
Hmm.
Um, and I have a pick for your Final Four version winning. For my Final Four winning, I'm making a bold choice and I'm giving it to Utah. I'm saying University of Utah is going to win the national championship. They've been building up to this since 1995. Last time they won as a team, they've been building and building and building. They declared this year as their year. They have Grace McCallum, who's going to be, another Olympian who we forget,
Hmm.
Olympic silver medalist from 2021, who we forget sometimes is on Utah's team. They have Avery Neff, who destroyed both of her ankles and is back and all around. Like they are doing everything they can to pull out all of the stops to win. And I think that heart and like their smart coaching and their smart competition um, has the potential to come through. So that's my pick. I'm very nervous, but I think it's possible. And to the extent that I can give Utah their flowers, I'd like to. So with this Final Four, my pick is Utah.
Okay. And then for the other Final Four.
Yeah. Well, you go first. It's your Final Four.
Okay. Well, I was gonna address the Utah thing because you said because you said they've been building towards this, like they're calling their shot. Allah, maybe like you could say they're the LSU of last year. Like they're in this
Mhm.
almost the same type of predicament where they've been knocking and knocking and knocking and finally want to break through. But my thing with Utah and
Mhm.
UCLA, obviously winning a national championship's the most important thing, but they are coming in here with these three schools who like Florida hates LSU. LSU hates Florida. The last thing Florida wants to do is see LSU win back-to-back national championships. They do not want that happening. Oklahoma, now we're all starting to now if they don't win this, they're going to hear is the dynasty over. And their coach, okay, she's not going to want any of that too. I know right now she is giving them bulletin board material, showing how they messed up, and it's like, do you want that to be your legacy?
Yeah, rumor has it that they missed the selection show because they were practicing.
And I could see that. And then LSU, obviously, we've already talked about first overall number one seed ever in their history, trying to repeat as champs. Like there's gonna be a lot of lions in this den, and there's only gonna be one title. So Utah's thing too, knocking on the door. But is that drive enough going to be enough to stop the other one? I don't. If they're like LSU of last year, then yes, I could see them winning the title. If Oklahoma is hell bent on revenge,
I don't
I
know
could,
if they are. I don't know if Oklahoma is.
someone is in that facility. I'll tell you that. If they're practicing during the selection show, someone is bent on revenge.
Well, I'm concerned about Oklahoma, and it's not because I feel I have learned my lesson from betting against Oklahoma. Like I have said every year, you can't bet against Oklahoma.
Mm,
This year in particular, I see Oklahoma and I worry. So starting off the season, they've been ranked number one all the way through, but like
mm-hmm,
we saw them early on in the season, and they weren't quite as crisp as they normally are. And so I thought, like, okay, they're pacing themselves. This is so smart. Like they're pacing themselves and giving themselves adversity to work through. They're not sticking their landings. Like they used to be like stick city. Like they used to be clean, sticking their landings, not like all six of them, all six in the lineup going up and doing it. And, they do have these all-arounders at the end of their lineups who are doing that. Um, but they have this freshman class that's like the number one freshman class in the country that kind of seems like they're having a hard time adjusting to college
mm-hmm,
competition a little bit. And I'm wondering whether all these years of having several of their best gymnasts do the all around every week for multiple years, whether that's hurting them. So, like, you're going to see Faith Torres in the all around. You're going to see Jordan Bowers in the all around. You're going to see Audrey Davis in the all around. You might even see like a Lily Peterson in the all around. But, like, I wonder if that is hurting them the way we saw that same strategy hurt Michigan back when Michigan was at the top. And I'm wondering whether they're making full use of their depth and developing their roster and their competitive energy across all their classes. These gymnasts who are also going in, Jordan Bowers, Victoria's, like, those are the gymnasts who fell. Like, those are the gymnasts who are probably beating themselves up about what happened last year. And I don't know that, like, in college gymnastics, we talk a lot about like having your teammates' backs. I don't know that they feel that their teammates have their backs the way that they should. I worry about them, especially given their performance at SECs. They're not as hungry, they're not as confident as Oklahoma that I'm used to seeing. And that worries me. And so I don't know that we'll see Oklahoma win this year. I think they'll have something to prove maybe years ahead, and they could pull it out, they could win, but they're not the untouchable Oklahoma that we saw even as early as last season. And I'm curious to know more about what's going on with them.
Could be that time. It could be just like, hey, it happens. But um, in terms of winning the title, I mean, LSU obviously. I mean, when it comes right down to it, man, I don't know if you could confidently say there is a better gymnast in all of college right now who is past 2 years who's better than Haley Bryant.
Oh, that's true. That's absolutely true.
So if you got the best person in the game and she's already won the national championship, she just repeated all that stuff and she's coming back to finish again for fifth year final time. And my thing with deciding this is like if you put all these gymnasts in here right now in the college, not in the Olympics, the college thing, if I need one person to win me a meet and I have Haley Bryant, I'm going to be confident in that. And I think LSU is going to repeat.
Hmm. And I agree with you. I think and this happened, I put UCLA in the Final Four.
Hmm.
And in that version of my Final Four, I had LSU winning.
And of course, things could happen, slip ups and all that. But I'm saying if everyone's on top, I don't think anyone's better than her right now. So she's just been going crazy. So I think I could see a repeat champion. Now, on the case if LSU does mess up and human error happens, I would want Jordan Childs and UCLA to win. Just to add more to her legacy as well. It would just be perfect. Coming off the third place thing, she can make a joke. Well, they can't take this medal. Try and take this one away from me, and all of that. I think that would be cool if they won.
I agree. And that would be like a real Cinderella story as well.
Hmm.
I don't know that Jordan needs a national championship
She
to
does
be happy.
not, but it would be very poetic.
It would be. And it would be good. I know they've put a lot of energy into being supportive. LA went through a lot. Their city went
Hmm.
through a lot this year with the wildfires. Um, and that's something they've talked about a lot too. They had some coaching turnover. They had some people transfer. They've really worked hard on changing their culture.
Yeah,
So I think it's possible for them, and it would be a good way to bounce back.
yeah.
And, I've been saying for years, UCLA has all of the talent they need.
Hmm.
They have all the talent they need. They just need to figure out how to compete.
They need to
And we
break
could see
through.
that this year.
They need to break through. Hey, LSU broke through last year. There's no shame in someone else breaking through this year as well. Sarah, anything else?
That's all. I'm really excited to see this play out.
All right. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to. That was our college gymnastics bracket, doing it well, not in person, virtually, but doing it. I didn't know where Sarah was going. She didn't know where I was going, so we did it together, basically live, kind of.
Mhm.
Um, it's that time. Who's going to be champ? Are we going to have a returning champ? We're going to have a repeat? Are we going to have a team who hasn't won it in a while do it, or a team who's never won do it? We're going to be here to see these great performances, and obviously we'll be back once the championship concludes, and we'll go from there. With that being said, the L7C podcast signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.